Thank you so much. It's good to be here. And our story involves a Black Lives Matter banner as well, but it's so much more than that. And I was invited to come here to in part tell you so much more than that story. As a note of introduction to the congregation that I serve, we're a small congregation, between 110 and 130 members over the last couple of years. And we're a congregation whose history includes the story that they tell themselves. And you probably know the stories that your congregation tell themselves about their history. Our history includes the story that they tell themselves about the era around the Vietnam War, when the congregation was torn apart by taking public stands that were not unanimous in the congregation and were controversial in the community. So you can imagine, with this story in our history and in the DNA, like embedded in the history, 40-something years ago in the congregation, that in 2015, when the UUA General Assembly delegates asked our congregations to support the movement for Black Lives and to be part of the prophetic witness that Black Lives Matter, I was faced with a dilemma about what to do. Because I knew that prophetic witness was important and that it was needed in the community that we serve in northern Westchester County, New York. So I went to the board first, and the board said, sure, put up a banner. They voted 6-1 to put up a banner. And that's great. But I knew that if I put a banner outside, I knew that the congregation wouldn't own that banner. It would be Reverend Michael's banner that got put up there, even with the board's support behind me. So what I did was I went to the congregation and started talking about what it means to make a prophetic witness in our society. I bought banners, and I hung them in the front of the sanctuary so that everyone, every time they came into worship, would have to look at the banners that said Black Lives Matter. And what I said to the congregation was, they're going to hang here until I'm sure that we're ready to put them outside. Okay? So if you see them here, it means we're not ready to put them outside yet. And it should remind you of that. I assigned the congregation homework, and I let them in on the dirty little secret that if you use a program like MailChimp to send your newsletter out, I can tell how many people click on the links in the newsletter. Further, I can tell who clicks on what links in the newsletter. I told them this, knowing that I was blowing my cover. I was pulling back that curtain for good, because you can't take back that information, right? But people read the articles that I put in the newsletter. We had programs about it. We had book discussions that 40 or 50 people attended. In a congregation of 110 or 120, I was stunned. I expected 7 or 8 people around a table, and it was 40 people who came having read the books that I assigned to them. And we discussed this, and it took about 6 months. And our vote, too, was without dissent. In a Unitarian Universalist congregation, there was one person who abstained, so I cannot say that it was a unanimous vote. But it was a vote taken without dissent. And this is important, because since 2016, when we put those banners up, our banners have been stolen 8 times. We put them very specifically under our sign, which is right on the road, because we wanted people driving down the road to be able to see them easily. We didn't want to hang it high up in a tree where nobody could get to it and nobody could see it either. And every time those banners are stolen, it reminds the congregation that it's their prophetic voice that's being silenced. And they become more resolute to do the work that's needed to be done in our community. We live in a community where Bedford is to our east, and Bedford is one of the whitest, wealthiest communities in the nation. Mount Kisco is to our west. Mount Kisco is almost entirely Latino immigrants. Bedford Hills is to our north. Bedford Hills is an almost entirely black middle class neighborhood. So we're right at the confluence of those three things. And the school district where we serve was roiled by racism around this time, and the school board decided to cancel an undoing racism training that the principal of the high school wanted to bring in for students and staff, because the white people in Bedford got really uncomfortable when they learned that they were going to be talking about racism in the high school. So instead, the Antioch Baptist Church, historically black church in Bedford Hills, our congregation, and a local United Methodist church teamed up and brought those workshops to the community. But instead of being held in the high school, which is a mile down the road, they were held at our fellowship. And we became a center of doing anti-racism work in northern Westchester County in partnership with communities of color in our organization, now in our community. This never would have happened if we hadn't together done the work that was required to make sure that we knew what it meant to put that banner outside. If it was Reverend Michael's banner outside, I would have talked a good deal in our community, and I would have been vocal and public about it, but I wouldn't have known that everyone in the congregation was behind me. And I wouldn't have known when angry people called us up that the president of the congregation would say, "Oh, I'll take that call." Or the vice president of the congregation would say, "Oh, I'll respond to that media inquiry," right? Because now it's not just my thing, it's our thing, and it's our prophetic voice. And I'm really close to 7 minutes, and will yield the rest of my time to the next people who are up.